Hello to all my lovely patrons out there. So you know me, I'm Dr. Roz. I am going to tell you today my story. So as many of you know, you've seen my tagline, debt-free degree with Dr. Roz. I have 3 degrees, including my PhD, and I only took $1,000 in loans. And so I'm going to share with you exactly how I did that, what sacrifices I made, what choices I made, and it just gives you a little bit of insight. Periodically, I'll be sharing other student stories. Of course, I'll be switching up names and details, so I'm not giving out somebody's personal information, but enough of a tweak so you can understand exactly how we can do this. So let's start with undergrad. So in undergrad, I went to an in-state institution. It was at that time, of course, it was the last millennium because I'm a little bit older. At that time, it was the least expensive state school in the state of Georgia. Also, it is routinely now on the list of, I think it's U.S. News and World Report, best value schools. And so that's something to think about when you think about that return on investment. Again, you know, my GRIT blueprint, the GRIT that we're following for debt-free degree is the G is grants and scholarships. The R is return on investment. The I is interconnected. So how are things fitting together? And then T is that triangle approach. So student money. So I'm going to be sharing with you how I earned some money, friends and family, and then also other people's money. So went to an in-state institution. They required us to live on campus and have the meal plan. So I didn't have a lot of flexibility there. It was kind of a unique situation, although it was very reasonable. And so that was a great thing. So that's one of the places that you can save money is housing and meal plan. And we'll talk about that in a different video. So again, went to an in-state institution. I qualified for Pell Grant. And so that helped pay for a good chunk of tuition, but I still needed to work. And so I worked 20 hours a week in the psychology department. In addition to that, I worked 2 12-hour shifts on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, at an inpatient psychiatric hospital. I was a psych major. So yes, I worked 44 hours a week. And when students say, or when parents say, well, I don't think that my student can work full time while they're in school, I understand that there are tremendous amounts of reasons. Keep in mind, though, that everything that I'm doing here in debt-free degree is to get you to graduate debt-free. Okay. And so I understand that there are a lot of exceptions. I understand that everybody has a different place where they need to be. For me, that mindset that began with the end in mind of graduating fully debt-free was really important to me. And so it was worth it to me to work the 20 hours a week as a student assistant, and then the 2 12-hour shifts, so 44 hours a week. As I tell my students, if you look at 160 hours during the week, and if you say, okay, I can't work a full-time job, that's 40 hours, that is 22% of your week. You still have 78%. And let me tell you, I had fun in college, okay? So it's not as if all I did was work and study and go to school. I mean, I was in a sorority. I was in a lot of different clubs. I didn't sleep a whole lot. I had a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends. College was amazing. I think sometimes when we decide on a career or we're thinking about like what it was a great time in our life and that's where we want to spend time, I loved college, and it's exactly why I continue to love college students today. College students of all ages. I love learning. I'm a learner leader. I just think that lifelong learning is incredibly important. So the reason that I took $1,000 in loans over my 3-degree trajectory is that there was a summer semester that I needed to take a student loan to pay for. Otherwise, I would have had to really, I think it was at that time we were on the quarter system. So I would have had to take 20 hours, and that was just too much in a quarter. And so not thinking ahead, because as I think at that point I was 21. So at that point, not thinking ahead, I was like, I'll just take the $1,000 in loans and worry about how to pay it off later, which is the mindset that a lot of people have today for tens of thousands of dollars, right? And so I did take that $1,000 loan to pay for summer school. So I was in school for 13 quarters. Graduated with my bachelor's, again, with $1,000 in loans. Very quickly paid that off. Then for my master's, again, it's because when you set that mindset, it's really important to think about that, because that's what guides you. So some of you have a faith tradition, some of you have mantras that you say to yourself, some of you have things that you say, this is what's important to me, and you evaluate decisions through that lens, right? And so for me, going into debt to gain an education just wasn't something I was willing to do. And so I always wanted a master's degree, wasn't really sure how that was going to happen, got out of school from my undergrad, was ready to take a little break. Honestly, I had been, preschool, then kindergarten through 12th grade, and then 4 years of college. I was ready to take a little break, ready to kind of spread my wings, ready to have that first career job and see who Elizabeth was. And so I graduated with my undergrad in 92. Had my only son in June of 99. In October of 99, so he was 4 months old, I got an email at work and it said, hey, we've got a few extra slots for the master's program. It's fully funded. Are you interested? Now, keep in mind, this is 1999. Online education was so new. I was working on the coast of Georgia, so literally, between Savannah and Jacksonville on the coast of Georgia, and this was an opportunity to get my master's at San Diego State. So literally across the country. Again, in 99, that was a big deal. So I had to track down my boss. He was at a conference. We didn't have cell phones then. So I called him and I said, hey, would you be willing to allow me to, apply for this grant in order to get my master's? So keep in mind with this grant, it was for every year you're in school, I needed to work 2 years after graduation. Okay. So the program was 3 years, which meant I needed to work how many years? 6 in the field of rehabilitation, which is working with people with disabilities. But keep in mind, that was really 9 years, right? Because it was 3 years of school where I was in the field, plus an additional 6 years. But in exchange for that, they were willing to pay for my education. So I think I had to pay for books. I think that was it. So my boss said, absolutely, I fully support you. So I started when my son was 4 months old. He was not even asleep through the night. And I started a master's in rehabilitation counseling through San Diego State. I remember reading to him. I would hold him and give him his bottle as I was reading my textbook and the rocking chair, and I was reading to him in a sing-song voice about rehabilitation, and so anyway, did that for 3 years. Absolutely love working with students with disabilities in all aspects. I've been in and around higher ed for almost 35 years, which is a little scary to say out loud, but it's the truth. So then graduated, worked in the field, worked my way up, had several different positions. Then all of a sudden, there's a position available at the institution where I was then director of disability services. And that position, it was director of career services. So my degree was basically career services for people with disabilities, but in order to pay it back, I had to have the most of my casework, most of my caseload had to be people with disabilities. So here this position comes available that I'm qualified for because it's director of career services. And so everything that I've done, to learn career services for people with disabilities, obviously transferability. Yes, I absolutely can do that for the entire student body, resume writing, networking, all of those kinds of things. It selfishly had a staff. It had a much better office, a suite of offices, just all things about it. Of course, it was a raise, all those kinds of things. All of that was really, really attractive to me. However, I was thinking about that grant, and I didn't want to have to pay that grant back if I stopped working in the field. And so that was one of the sacrifices that I needed to make. I stayed in that current position, not that saying there was that difficult, because of course I loved it, but thinking about advancing, it did curtail a little bit. That was a sacrifice that I needed to make. again, fast forward, I'm working at that same institution, and at that point, it was up in the mountains, about an hour and a half north of Atlanta, and we didn't offer any PhDs at our institution. Well, the school where I worked partnered with Georgia State in Atlanta, and the Georgia State professors agreed to come to North Georgia in Dahlonega and provide this PhD program. And guess what? As a benefit of working for the university, then all tuition and fees were taken care of. So at any in-state institution in the state of Georgia, if you're working there full time, then that's one of your benefits. So here I am. Would I have gotten a PhD? Would my top choice have been a PhD in educational policy studies? Probably not, because I didn't even know anything about it. Would my top dream school to get the PhD from, would it have been Georgia State? Probably not. I might have chosen a different school. However, when somebody says, hey, Elizabeth, you can leave this building and walk to that building right next door, and for the next 4 years, you can get a free PhD, sign me up. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I tell you the thousands of ways that I have used both the degree in educational policy studies, but also the deep love that I have for Georgia State, and how grateful I am that University of North Georgia and Georgia State had that consortium. I'm also exceptionally grateful that I have 3 degrees, including my PhD, and I only took $1,000 in loans. Now, you heard in there a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of working full time. When I got my master's, I was working full time. Again, my son was 4 months old and not sleeping through the night, and I was working on my master's. When I got my PhD, I was working full time. I was teaching part time for San Diego State online, and then working on my PhD. So it's entirely possible. Again, when you think about the 40 hours, so you're working a 40-hour work week, that's 22% of your week. Okay. Oftentimes people will say, well, how did you study, or, whatever, when I just kind of put habits in place. And when you think about, okay, if I'm going to put an hour a day, of course, in the PhD, it required a lot more than that oftentimes, but on average, if I'm going to put in an hour a day, somebody says, I don't have an hour a day. I can't set aside an hour a day. An hour a day, 4% of your day, 4%. So it's a mindset. It's a mindset. If I'm going to begin with the end in mind, if I'm going to ensure that I'm going to graduate debt free, then what are the things that I'm going to do to put in place? That's just an overview of my story. To all you lovely patrons, I'm so excited that you're here. I apologize about that. I'm so excited that you're here. And I just want you to know that throughout this journey, you're going to hear snippets more of my story. But I just wanted you all at the top of this, when you're becoming a member, to see this story, because I want it to inspire you. I want you to know that it's not going to be easy. It's very simple, but it's not easy. Did I say that correctly? Sometimes I get that confused. Is it simple and not easy? It's easy and not simple. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.